Whatever subject matter a cozy game explores, it always does it in a very specific way. If the game has combat, it's never too violent. If there's a story, it should never leave you feeling too sad. The challenges the game gives you to solve should never be too hard. And even the colors are soft, and sometimes the shapes, the letters rounded out just so there's no way you can hurt yourself on their sharp corners. Life simulation games from the late 90s to the early 2000s created the blueprint for this style of game, and cozy games today still follow it pretty faithfully. Yasuhiro Wada's childhood in the Japanese countryside inspired Harvest Moon, which inspired Stardew Valley, which sold a gazillion copies, and now pretty much half of all cozy games are at some level about farming. Then when you add the environment building from The Sims and Animal Crossing, and sprinkle on the relationship mechanics that are a key part of all of these games, you get the basic idea of what cozy games are today. They simulate the life, a hobby, or a job of someone living a kind of a normal, mundane existence. But there are some things I never quite understood about this. Like, which part of all that is actually making these games cozy? The aesthetic is more cute than anything, and besides, why does pretend work have anything to do with coziness in the first place? What is so cozy about farming that they keep making the same game over and over again? And why do I no longer get that warm, comforting feeling from these games that I once did? There's this manga I like about two girls climbing a massive, layered city in the remains of their war-torn world. Their journey has two drivers: curiosity and survival. They want to see what's at the top of the city, and also, if they stopped exploring, they would either starve or succumb to the weather. So they move upwards from one makeshift shelter to another, scavenging for food while reflecting on the meaning of the daily challenges they face on their path. Their silly antics plus the cute moe blob art style is a smokescreen, diverting your attention from just how doomed Chito and Yuri are. As the higher they climb, the scarcer the resources become, and every bit of progress they make comes with a new sacrifice. Anything that weighs them down too much gets left behind, including not just physical possessions, but mainly dreams, like ones of a normal life with permanent shelter and an actual bed to sleep in. Girls Last Tour is a story about getting comfortable with hopelessness, but also choosing to enjoy life in spite of its futility. It's absurdist, kind of silly, and also genuinely just sad. But even though in its bleakness, its story would clearly break the unwritten rules of the cozy genre, goddamn does reading it make me feel cozy. And if you reduce coziness to its most base elements, it makes total sense why that's the case. A quiet nook in a loud house, a fireplace, warm shelter from a snowstorm, the sound of heavy raindrops on a metal roof as you drift asleep. Coziness is a feeling, one with a bit of a hazy definition, but those are the kind of places, states I often hear people describing as cozy. And while my understanding of this feeling aligns with those descriptions, I think there's a very important distinction to be made between something that is just nice and comfortable and something that actually evokes cozy. And my theory, and the idea that the argument of this video is based around, is that the difference between the two is the additional presence of a potential danger or discomfort that is specifically being negated by whatever is being perceived as cozy. And you can feel just how important this contrast is when you remove the negative element from the earlier examples. The warm fireplace loses most of its magic when it's a beautiful sunny day outside, and the metal roof becomes cozy only after you can hear the raindrops on it, after the potential of getting rained on is there to be observed from behind a barrier of safety. So coziness, I believe, is not only comfort, warmth and earth tones. It also involves the reassurance of shelter, the intuitive knowledge that at least in this instant you're safe from the harm the world could be causing you. And this contrast, taken to its limits, is what makes Girls' Last Tour feel the way it does. The more layers they climb, the more obvious it becomes that there's only one way their journey is going to end. But instead of fixating on the parts that are out of their control, its characters focus on the moments of comfort and happiness that can be found even within a dying world. And Girls' Last Tour is not like an anomaly in this. There is something very cozy about these stories of collapse. In Dark Souls, the role of the undead in the twilight of the Age of Fire is kind of messed up, to say the least. They fight, die and reawaken, with each cycle chipping away at the person they thought they once were, all for upholding a system they do not understand, a greater purpose they were tricked into pursuing. But even if it's a part of the scheme that enslaves them, even if it's literally the charred bones of their kin keeping them company, the bonfire is truly cozy in multiple dimensions. It's the only safe haven for an undead, and a rare source of light in a world that's only getting darker. And it's the same for you as the player. Not only is the bonfire aesthetically classic cozy, it's a direct antidote to every gameplay anxiety crafted by Miyazaki and them to mess with you. As long as you're sitting in front of it, there will be no skeletons pushing you off cliffs and no invaders trying to style on you. The benches in Hollow Knight benefit from a similar effect through their function as healing checkpoints, but the coziest to me are the ones that put some distance between you and the fall of Hallownest. The area of the lookout bench on the western edge of Queen's Gardens is like a little time capsule that didn't get the memo about the invasion of the infected mantis warriors around it. The overgrown vegetation, an inevitable result of the collapse, is visible right behind the window. But on the inside, even the fragile automatic gramophone has been left intact. And when you're sitting there, listening to music created for a time and bug that have long since passed, it's less melancholic than it is cozy. The setting makes the destruction feel almost like just a natural step along the path towards the next phase of this small underground kingdom. It's not just the cold Chito and Yuri are being shielded from when they're snuggled up in the back of their motorcycle. The amount of the contrast plays an important part here. It's also literally the end of life as they know it, and every possible paralyzing fear associated with that. These are all stories where safety and shelter are in high demand, and so there are many opportunities for big coziness to emerge in them. Which is why I find it so interesting that the one genre named after this feeling is defined by the lack of any element that you would need to be sheltered from. And I do like cozy games. I like collecting, building and decorating until I decide that my house is pretty enough, and as someone who approaches the simulation aspect pretty sincerely, I always surprise myself with how emotionally invested I've gotten with the characters when it's time to move on from the game. Like, I don't generally care about old save files, but I wouldn't want to delete my New Horizons island even though I've been done with the game for years at this point. The villagers are just pixels brought to life by some very repetitive lines of dialogue, but even if it feels very silly to say, I literally made the island for them, so it is for them as much as it is for me. And I feel guilty enough just going back there only to record some footage like this, like some deadbeat island caretaker. But it's been a long time since Animal Crossing or any other cozy game has actually made me feel cozy. And in fact they, especially the more derivative ones, usually have the complete opposite effect on me. Not only are they, by definition, devoid of that contrast of danger and shelter, what's being simulated in them is ordinary life, and the mechanics beneath the surface that motivate you to act reflect that. These games are full of deadlines, calendars, and lists of menial tasks that you have to repeat daily, or you're going to miss out on optimal progress or some time-locked collectible. Not only is there nothing inherently cozy about farming or building, these games often even feel very work-like, in the most sterile 9-to-5 sense of the word. And this is not at all to say that the name of this genre is incorrect. There's an active community of hundreds of thousands of people who consider these games cozy, and I wouldn't accuse them of lying for saying that. But the connection between how these games play and look like, and what they are called, is kind of ambiguous to me. And to bridge that gap, I had to look into the unique circumstances in which the cozy genre came to be. Now this is gonna sound super obvious, but usually the elements that are in a game define what genre it belongs to. For example, games with scary stuff in them are called horror games because of all the scary stuff in them. But cozy games do not work this way. They only contain the shelter part of the cozy equation, and you, as the player, must bring a very specific kind of discomfort with you to actually get to enjoy the cozy. There was a time when that word wasn't synonymous with this genre. These games used to be just called sim games, and the name change wasn't caused by a change in the games themselves, but rather one in the collective circumstances they were played in. I'm talking about COVID, of course, and the isolation and disruption of routine that came with it. Cozy used to just be a quality that people sometimes, occasionally found in simulation games. But after 2020, not only did the popularity of these games explode, people started experiencing them differently, suddenly referring to them as cozy at a scale that causes genre creation, with new dedicated communities and even devs that now label their games as cozy to communicate a certain type of experience to their audience. And it wasn't by chance that cozy was the word that popped into the minds of the gamers playing these sims at that time. They again simulate work, routine, and social situations, all of which back in 2020 were harder to find naturally. And for the people uncomfortable in their absence, these games were the perfect puzzle piece to replace what was taken away. A digital sanctuary you could escape to from whatever was going on outside. Now, I'm not saying that if you still like cozy games, you're probably jobless and friendless, but whatever it may be that you're struggling with, I'm sure that a digital world simulating the very things that you lack and crave in your own life might feel pretty cozy, as Animal Crossing did for me when I was stuck inside my house. This whole thing was an accident, a convenient sequence of game releases and world phenomena that happened to propel an existing style of game to crazy heights of prominence. But even though the event causing the widespread need for the kind of shelter they provide has largely passed, the new name and the genre have remained static. And in that sense, its current state seems a bit underdeveloped, doesn't it? It's as if the devs that set out to specifically make cozy games after the lockdown boom concluded that simulating work is how you make people feel cozy, without ever stopping to examine why that was the case in the first place. And instead of there now being a wide array of games designed to ease whatever worries might be weighing down on our shoulders, they're still mainly doing farming sims, regurgitating the same ideas from 30 years ago when the seeds of this genre were originally planted. And I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. There's a difference in the dynamic between the player and the game when it comes to worlds that contain something cozy and ones that provide the function of shelter to the player. And just like it did in 2020, I think the latter case should only happen unintentionally. Because the alternative, games intentionally designed as shelter, seems kind of dystopian to me. Imagine the devs taking a more user-oriented approach. They realized that those were the kinds of games that helped people cope with being locked inside their houses, but there's a lot of other trouble. Health, financial, the looming collapse of the world that we're used to, people would love to feel sheltered from as well. Now, how that would manifest as a game would be tough to predict, but the moment the cozy genre breaks through the boundaries of job simulation to intentionally churn out digital sanctuary designed to protect you from any kind of weather, is also the moment when these games become less artistic expression and more utility, to put it very kindly. A product that caters to the sensibilities, values and needs its creator assumes you to have. And that's not what I look for in games or other art, whether it's cozy or any other genre. I'd rather experience what the artist has to say, delivered in a way only they could have come up with, even if it's a bit rough around the edges. It's the parts that are not made in service to you that make these games interesting. And I think they're also a key reason why those specific early sim games are still so heavily imitated to this day. Katsuya Eguchi wasn't wading deep through the analytics trying to uncover a niche market of loners who he could cash in on with a new fun animal game. He did it for himself. He moved away from his friends and family to pursue his career, and it was in his own loneliness where he found the inspiration to explore leaving home and the value of relationships, like the ones he felt distanced from through Animal Crossing. The Sims developer Will Wright wanted to create a life house building simulator because he had recently gone through the process of rebuilding his own life, having lost his home in a devastating California firestorm. And I would be very surprised if Girl's Last Tour had its origins in any place other than Tsukumizu's heart, even if it happens to deal with all the stuff that has kept me up at night since I was a kid. The path to the final layer is a simple spiral staircase reminiscent of a DNA ladder. Chito and Yuri have given everything, even burnt their journals to heat their final cups of coffee to make it here. And yet the final climb will borrow even more from them, as one by one their senses are stripped away, finally losing even the boundaries of their material bodies, becoming one with everything they've experienced thus far. There is nothing at the top. The staircase just abruptly ends as if the construction never got finished. It's as far as humanity made it, and it's also the end of the road for these last two remaining people in the world. By this point, whatever hope you might have been holding on to has already slipped past your fingers, dissolved into other emotions. The metaphorical snowstorm was always a part of the picture, and so was the shelter from it. After they come to terms with the fact that it's the end, they have a snow fight, they gaze at the stars for a bit, and then fall asleep. And that's pretty cozy to me.